us as a young people, we don't have that, what can I say? We don't have that family at a family level whereby we can be supported as young people to join this space. You'd find out, Kuti, some other people they don't even know, Kuti, it's our right to have water, let's say at council level, especially I grew up in Chungwiza. I started to SRHR like when I was around 16, and my family goes to Masowe. They were like, "You are now involving yourself in politics. You are going to die. It's not allowed at church," all those things. So as a young people, kutuzovani that passion to join in this kind of space, you be afraid like, oh no, so what are they gonna say? So what are my family going to say? They say it's scary here, people have been killed, blah blah blah, ZANU-PF time, Mugabe time, people were killed and all. So it gives us powerless. Even at the end of the day, if we vote, there's no change for youth. Look how much drug abuse is being used, and the more people who are using drugs, it's young people. There's no jobs, there's nothing. But after voting, they'll be like, we are going to create jobs for young people, we are going to do this. So there's almost empty promises after we vote for these people. So it looks like we are ending up losing hope, losing focus as young people. Most of the young people now, they've left the country because they're saying there's no hope for young people. So I would say we need change for these political people, and I don't know how they are going to do it, but most of young people, they've lost hope in them.
It is becoming known for me each and every month to be shocked by the Blawa City Council bill that comes at the end of the month. It doesn't really make sense. When I look at how we use Blawa City Council services and compared to the bill that comes at the end of the month, they don't tally. They don't tally at all. Give an example of my household. We stay as two people in our household. We both work. We are not at home most of the times. So which means we don't use
we're talking about the issue of the youth vote. How important is the youth vote as we go towards the elections? We're waiting for the president to proclaim the election date, and then we can go to the polls. How important is the youth vote?
What a great, we constitute the majority in Zimbabwe according to the statistics that have been out. And remember, as we constitute the majority, why are we the target to say the youths are the major stakeholder in maybe influencing? We've got numbers. So if you've got numbers, you've got a greater chance of influencing. You've got a greater chance of actually choosing the people that you want. That's number one. Number two, you've got a chance also as young people to team up, right, and also maybe participate in these elections as candidates. If we wake up today as young people to say we are voting in young parliamentarians, young councillors, I think we might as well have a greater influence and a greater chance if we are united. Thinking Esibanayo, Brighton, is that we as young people we are not united. So that's why it becomes difficult to even actually say we have a greater influence in this election. Before even actually, when we check our history, young people were the ones in the forefront of everything. But coming down, so siza ngapha kithi Brighton, sokulihlazo kuyayimisa, uyabona. Like what you're saying, which umuntu ufuna ukuthi isibambiso yikuyini by the end of the day. If I participate to register to vote, if I participate to vote for you. So that's why the issues of vote buying come into. Because umuntu omncane ulambile ufuna ukudla Brighton, they'll tell you, I'd rather vote for someone ozanika imali uyathenga into enkulu. I'd rather vote for someone who will give me something at the end of the day. We don't even think about the future. We don't even think about the things that affect us, we as young people. But by the end of the day, it's in our numbers. I will then say the best solution for all these shenanigans or whatever is happening, let's talk about the issues. The effects of not voting, the effects of not being a registered voter. Let's talk about those challenges, right? And let's bring them to the table and find a solution as young people. But in King, we're so paralyzed. If I'm Zanu PF, I'm pro Zanu PF. If one is triple C, pro triple C, there is no unity among us young people, Brighton. We just hate each other. There's so much that is happening, and I believe Brighton, it's a chance, but with all those factors that I've said, it becomes near impossible to influence any change in Zimbabwe or anything that we can do as young people.
Looking at the subject, we need to look at what really is demoralizing our young people from participating in the elections. You see, the largest number so far, maybe if we are going to look down the history lane, the largest number of young people after independence that became politically involved and formed a movement. It was during the formation of MDC. You remember that the UZ students and massively young people joining, becoming part of the politics. That was the largest you have ever had. And that group was solemnly affected by how the government also treated them. When you look at, they were beaten up, they were arrested, some of them, a whole lot of things happened to those young people. And some of them, as young as they were, they left the country, they're running away from political issues, going outside of the country to go and find greener pastures. So the way what I feel so much so is affecting young people that they are not participating. It's how the government has responded to diversity and people that have different opinions. It has never treated them kindly, and it has not treated them well. And if you go to the ground and talk to young people, they detest politics. They don't want to be part of politics. And you'll find that those young people that are in politics, a number of them have been promised something. You go to those that are in the camp of ZANU PF, they've been promised to say, no, we'll give you land, we'll do you this, we'll do this for you. They are no longer going there from a point that they want to participate and bring change or be active, but they are in it because something was promised to them. And you find even when these register to vote initiatives were being done by political parties, some of these political parties were giving these young people incentives to say, we'll give you so much if you register to vote, or we'll do this for you if you register to vote, which is, at the end of the day, which is wrong. People should be aware themselves of their political responsibility when it comes to voting, the choice and the power that they have when it comes to voting. But I feel the environment in Zimbabwe has played a role in discouraging young people, because even as of today, the liberation struggle, when you look at the number of young people that went into the liberation struggle, it was because the liberation struggle itself was being championed, and it was being pioneered by majority young people. Spaces were created for young people to participate. When you look at even the people that we are looking at them and saying these guys are now old, those were the young people. You remember them, Jurus, they went there when they were 15, they went there when they were 14. Some of these guys, the guys that went there when they were 12, going into war to train and try and liberate, because the vision and the future was sold to them, and no one stopped them or stood on their way to say, guys, you cannot do this because of this. They went out because they understood the vision. But in a liberated Zimbabwe, you find that young people are being stopped from pursuing the political space because of how the environment is. It's so discouraging. I remember when I was young, and I was still at school. We'll talk politics. I remember one day I was talking with my friend, and then all of a sudden we were talking about after the formation of MTC. We're just from school. We're just chatting outside, and then all of a sudden my mother calls me into the house and says, no, Njabulo, you cannot be talking in this way. Do you want to be arrested? Do you want to be beaten up? We're just saying, no, we're talking about Morgan Swangirai. We felt it was a good challenge for Mka. But already the environment, as young as I was by that time, I was just pulled in and said, no, you can't have this conversation just out there in the open. This is the environment. And a lot of young people, they are feeling hopeless. You see, to say, to what end? Even if I go there, participate, then what? At the end of the day, the situation and the circumstances, they don't change for me as a young person. Opportunities are not even being created for me. Spaces are not even being created by the very same people that I put into power. So we need, I think there is a need for us to change the political environment and cleanse it and do something to bring an inspiration to young people so that they participate in you look at, even it's not even only in Zimbabwe, it's all over Africa. Africa is the youngest population in the world, but it is the oldest leaders in the world. We have the youngest 70% of Africa are young people, but 80% of our leaders are old people above 70 years. You check your states, you check all the African leaders, you check from wherever where you point in Africa. You look at today, you look at Nigeria, they've had elections. Guess what? Someone who's 7 or 8 has been voted into power. What vision? How will he inspire young people to join in political? If that old person is occupying the seat of power, why didn't they bring in young people to inspire other young people to come into the corridors of politics and to inspire them to love their country? Right now, most young people are hustlers. They are trying to make it in life. They are trying to build their life. They are not even concerned about politics because they are asking themselves, what will I benefit at the end of the day? So I think as Africans, and I think even especially as Zimbabweans, we need to change the political environment and make it to inspire young people. Most of the young people, they are turning to drugs, not because that's what they hoped for, But because they have tried all avenues and they felt sometimes everything is not working for them, and they are now numbing their pain by going into drugs and by doing things that they are not supposed to be doing because space is not being created for young people. In as much as we have had, I've heard a lot of people, we are celebrating Women's Month and stuff like that. I've heard a lot of people saying, no, let's have a designated percentage for women in leadership. Why are we not advocating the same for the young people to say, in the 70% we want it to be mixed women and men, but 70% has to be youth because the youth are the future. And if we are going to have a successful future, we need the people that are going to be present in the future. Some people mess up in our politics today because in 20 or 30 years from today, they are not going to be part of the same Zimbabwe. They are not going to be alive. So they don't care what they do to the future of Zimbabwe. So we need to start pushing an agenda for young people so that young people, they feel like they are part. Imagine if you elect a 30-year-old president, 2 terms are up for him. The same Zimbabwe, if things don't work out for him and he remains in Zimbabwe, he is going to live in the same Zimbabwe that he made the wrong decisions for. But where the Mnangagwa is going to be in 20 years from today, Mugabe never lived to enjoy the Zimbabwe as a free or as a just a layman in Zimbabwe. He never lived to enjoy the Zimbabwe that he presided over. So I think there needs to be an advocacy for seats for young people so that it inspires them also to participate and become part.
Allow me to start by quoting the words said by Malcolm. Malcolm says, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. This is a very powerful statement. If we continue to be silent, naturally our lives will end, and they are about to end, especially for a young person, because we are seeing what is happening. A young person is so disenfranchised. Brighton, when we talk of issues of saying young people are hustlers, they are busy trying to make money, they don't have time for governance issues. That's a lame excuse. Do you understand why? If you're hustling, government must cushion you. Government must be able to assist you. In your hustling, you must be a visionary to say what will become of me at the time when I am supposed to retire. And with these hustles of ours, really, when you sit back and think, it's just making enough to put food on the table, and that's it. Young people are disenfranchised. When we look at issues of housing, young people don't have houses. You know, you find at times in these streets, people putting pressure on each other to say, how old are you? Yet you are still staying with your mother or you are still staying with your relatives. They don't have houses. And when it comes to education, they're actually struggling. Many cannot afford to go as far as tertiary education. Just weeks back, NAST was proposing to charge 710, is it 710 or 700? Exactly, 700 US dollars for tertiary education. And this is a young person who is supposed to access education. But the parents whom he or she depends on cannot afford all that. Talk of healthcare. So young people are the ones that are doomed. And if they continue to be silent about issues that matter, issues that concern them, we can't talk of older folks. Older folks have the things that we are talking about. If he or she falls sick, he has medical aid because he or she is already working. You, as a young person who is in the informal sector, if you fall sick today with the little money that you are hustling, it is going to go all towards your medical care, and it's just a fraction of it. Fall sick and see how doomed we are in Zimbabwe. We don't have a proper health insurance. We actually don't have a public health insurance. All these issues are affecting young people, which is why they ought to stand up and say, no, we need to correct the ills of the past. And as I was thinking, Brighton, I thought maybe there is need to adopt the model of the Black Consciousness movement. We may not need to call it the Black Consciousness, but perhaps the Youth Consciousness or perhaps the Poverty Consciousness movement. Find that which is common amongst us as young people. We begin to talk about it. We begin to find, we begin to really understand the reason why we may be many in terms of number as young people, but we are not seen where decisions are supposed to be made. It's because we have not understood the consciousness part. When there is a transformation of the mindset, no one needs to be pushed on what needs to be done because we are the most affected.
What's pushing you back, Tabiso, to say young people are not going there to cast their vote, just to vote? What's pushing you back, Tabiso?
Thank you so much, Brighton. Yeah, I mean, it's still the same issues that are being discussed. To say, first of all, before looking at young women and young men separately, there's a lot of challenges regarding young people's participation in civic spaces, owing to the toxic environment. I think that has been actually associated with issues around civic participation and governance. Um, Even if you look at over the years how one of our youngest female member of parliament has been dragged, heckled, has been subjected to torture, violence, abductions, and stuff like that. That's discouraging. Already the environment is toxic. Already the playing field is not level for women, for men actually, and now you bring it back to women. It's even more toxic. At some point in time, you just have to make that decision to stay away, not because you do not want to, but because you have a lot of fears. So I think that we are not yet at a stage that really encourages the participation of women in politics. We are not yet there. We still need to do a lot of groundwork towards ensuring that we have a healthy playing field, to ensure that we also have empowerment and support systems for women. If you look at even the monies that are required to take part in the race, and when you're campaigning, when you're going to participate as a candidate, and you look at the plight of everyone in Zimbabwe in terms of the economy, and it's even worse for women now. So I think we're really not there. And it's really discouraging for women to take part. There's a lot of toxicity, there's a lot of violence, and in instances where you find there are women, you know that most likely there are those that have just been placed there who probably speak or respond according to the master or the person behind their being there, and they're not necessarily in a position to actually articulate issues that are affecting women in general. And also bringing it back a little bit to young people's participation. You know what? I still feel like, unfortunately, we have that tendency of wanting to fatten the cow when it's on the scale. This is a literal translation ukuthi, we say "Kunonisela inkomo esikalini." We are now rushing towards the election, and we want to try and cut the corners and so forth and so forth. Voter education, just like any other component that requires behavior change, is a process, that requires social behavior change, is a process. I look at how we've done work around HIV and AIDS, Brighton, and we haven't stopped. We're still saying, Wuti, please go and get tested for HIV. If you are HIV negative, then you will know how to adopt safer sex practices and keep healthy. If you're HIV positive, you'll know that you have access to treatment and you get to suppress the viral load. It's been years, but we're still passing the same message. Why? Because it's human nature, ukuthi, they don't just wake up with changed behavior. So you need to constantly divide. We're still sitting in tables, we're still sitting in meetings where we are still devising methods and ways and strategies of reaching out with messaging to people. It should be the same process with issues around voter registration, voter education. It's not just about the election year. There's a gap, there's a 4-year gap, and within that gap, what are we filling it with? Are we giving? Because at that point right now, we've got 16-year-olds who are going to be getting their IDs, but it's not about what. Okay, we're going to focus on eligible voters. What message do we have for that 16-year-old in 2028? So it is a process that we need to continuously, be carrying out that voter education. We need to be carrying out that mobilization and so forth, whilst we look forward ukuthi sisiyafika, because an election day is just an event, it's just one day, but the processes are done in between. So we really need to still prioritize. Unfortunately for us, we just look forward for the voting day, and when it's done, we are waiting to complain and go to Concord, and we spend the next 1 year being grumpy and doing protests. I'm not saying protests are bad, they're good, they are constitutional right, but we could do more. We could sit down and reflect on what went wrong, what do we need to improve in future, and we still need to make sure that our message is persuasive. I don't find it working, we say, you young people are the ones with the crisis, who are unemployed and stuff. So what? Because I can just say it's okay. Does it mean it will change anything? And then in that same vein, and not still not register to vote? So we still need to have that persuasive messaging to young people. We need to sell a vision. What are we selling? What is CCC selling to the young people? What is ZANU-PF selling to the young people? What is DUZ for us? You name it. What are they selling to young people? We still need to convince young people, because we need their vote. We still need to have those intergenerational conversations. We still need that intergenerational consensus. We still need to talk to Ama2K and not demonize them. So at the end of the day, because right now, Brighton, young people don't have, especially Ama2K, they've got nothing. They've got no good memory of a good time that came about having good leadership. So at the end of the day, you really have to try and convince them ukuthi something is going to change. Right now, we are running around like headless chickens, trying to organize funds for under 21 girls to go for their hockey match. We're trying to organize money for a 10-year-old chess player, But what do you think will happen if those children fail? If we fail them, they won't see the importance of participating, because they are victims of leadership that has failed them. So we still need to convince. I know it's so easy to say it's your loss. I know it's so easy to say ukuthi, that's your problem. The ones who take, if they decide to vote, it affects us positively. If they decide not to, it affects everyone. So at the end of the day, we still need to be conscious to that fact and persuade, sell something, sell a vision. Just tell them, whatever it is that we can do, devise strategies, just like what we are doing when we are doing health programming.
As a young person in politics, why do you think the youth vote matters?
Basically say that there is a confusion between age and maturity in Zimbabwean politics. Whenever you grow up, you are considered mature, even though you're not mature. And the other thing is that the politics of Zimbabwe is not appealing to the youths. The youths are not basically, they don't have appetite to join Zimbabwean politics because it's basically systematically segregating them. So it becomes very difficult for them to penetrate because they're asking themselves questions as to why am I even bothering myself joining this whole juncture? Because there are some popular initiatives that happened in Zimbabwe, but they turn out to be using youth, and the youth they didn't benefit anything from them. For example, there's a popular the expropriation of land without compensation. Who was expropriating land? Who was beating up the white people? Who was chasing them away? Who was pushing for that initiative? Are the young people, but who benefited from the expropriation of land without compensation? Those who were already old, those who did not even participate, those who were politically connected, those who were economically connected, and those who were stable in terms of their economy. So it becomes systematically demoralizing each and every young person out there to think that I might be even participating in this whole juncture, but at the end of the day, I'm pushed away. Someone else, who is controlling things from behind, comes in and take over what I have worked for. So I think we need to look into the inclusion of young people from its fundamental things, as to say, are the young people fully included, or we are just doing it as a way of just saying it. Personally, I don't believe that the young people should be used as the tools to vote or as the tools to perpetrate violence. I believe that there are a lot of things that young people can do besides perpetrating violence, besides voting. Voting should be something that should be done by each and every Zimbabwean. However, waking up and basically pushing the word is to say, young people, go and register to vote. This is going to change your economy. This is going to change your day-to-day livelihoods. The question is, how are you going to change the economy? Because there is no clear explanation as to, if I vote here in my little space, Skobokobo in Nkai here, if I'm to vote here, how does my vote going to change Skobokobo? That's a fundamental question. So I think there is a lack of messaging as well when it comes to the political players, when it comes to the political parties. We're not clear as to what are we offering for the young people in Uzumba Maramba Pfungwe. If they are to vote today, how is their vote going to impact the livelihoods of the people in Uzumba Maramba Pfungwe? How is their vote going to talk about the industrialization of the economy? How is their growth going to talk about the building or the job creation in the country? So if we don't speak to such issues, young people will basically think that no, these guys are just coming in because they want our vote. And like my sister said, silomkhubo ukuthi sifuna ukuthi inkomo inone already siseskalini. So at the moment we push much about vote, we make much noise about voting when it's towards elections. And then as soon as we are done with the elections, we are in parliament, we are in government, we're making money, the Ministry of Youth is nowhere to be found, the portfolio of youth is nowhere to be found, all these youth in non-governmental whatever organizations, they are nowhere to be found. Then 4 years down the line, they are back saying, hey, youth empowerment, pamberi nyokubatani zama youth, pamberi down with the violence and etc. But what is it that you have done for the young people for the past 5 years? They have voted you into power. So we need to start interrogating these things. What we are doing out there as leaders, is it appealing to the young people? And I would love to agree with my brother Unjabulo to say that the discouragement starts from the family level. When you grow up, I remember when I was 17 years and I tried to join a revolutionary movement in my area, which was called Mtshakazi Republic Party, one of the most revolutionary movements we have in Zimbabwe. I tried joining Mtshakazi Republic Party when I was at school. I was Form 6 by then. Then I joined Mtshakazi Republic Party. My father even threatened to disown me, saying that I'm going to die. And I said, that's how scary is politics to the young people. When you try to join something that is politically linked, you are basically getting discouragement from the family level to the community level. You are told that you are going to be beaten up, you are going to be killed, you are going to put your family in danger, and etc. So that becomes, something that says, no, why should I even be forcing myself when I'm going to be killed? And at the end of the day, there are some messages that are saying the votes are being rigged. What will make me think that my votes are not gonna be rigged? So we need to interrogate many things for us to begin to have an appealing political environment to the young people. Because at the moment when you hear that there's violence kwakati, you find out that young people are involved. It's either they are the ones perpetrating violence, or they are the ones violence they are the ones they are the victims of violence. So until and unless we begin to understand that there is a lot that young people can do in politics without being involved in violence, without being used for political mileage by other political players, we can go far. Because at the moment when you are young, there's another thing that is also very, very, very wrong in Zimbabwean politics. When you are young, even if when you have an opportunity to speak, you are said, no, uyu mwana mdika ana chaangatudzi, mntwana omncane ayikho into azositshela yona. We were there during the time of war, we were there during the formation of whatsoever, we were there during the formation of a certain movement. And by then, when it was biologically impossible for you to have joined the liberation struggle, it was biologically impossible for you to have joined the formation of MTC. But there are people who use their presence at the formation of a certain movement that became popular, or that brought results to the country, and they basically wash away whatever idea that you are bringing on the table. They basically do away with whatever you are saying to them. They just say, no, ngumntwana wena, hlala phansi sikutshele thina sasikhona empini, hlala phansi sikutshele thina sasikhona kuvula ibandla elinje, wena hlala phansi, you know nothing. So that when I'm listening to my fellow young person being attacked in such a way, I'm like, no man, why am I even involving myself into this? So I think we need to build a more appealing environment for the young people to join.
Us as a young people, we don't have that. What can I say? We don't have that family at a family level whereby we can be supported as young people to join this space. You'd find out, Kuti, some other people, they don't even know, Kuti, it's our right to have water, let's say at council level, especially I grew up in Chungwiza. I started SRHR like when I was around 16, and my family goes to Masowe. They were like, you are now involving yourself in politics. You are going to die. It's not allowed at church, all those things. So as a young people, kutuzovani that passion to join in this kind of space, you be afraid like, oh no, so what are they gonna say? So what are my family going to say? They say it's scary. Here, people have been killed, blah blah blah. ZANU-PF time, Mugabe time, people were killed and so it gives us powerless. Even at the end of the day, if we vote, there's no change for youth. Look how much drug abuse is being used, and the more people who are using drugs, it's young people. There's no jobs, there's nothing. But after voting, they'll be like, we are going to create jobs for young people. We are going to do this. So there's almost empty promises after we vote for these people. So it looks like we are ending up losing hope, losing focus as young people. Most of the young people now, they've left the country because they're saying there's no hope for young people. So I would say we need change for these political people, and I don't know how they are going to do it, but most of young people, they've lost hope in them.
I think number one, our educational system in terms of voting should start, after ZJC, the one that we used to, if you remember ZJC, that is Form 2. At Form 3, I think the syllabus should be there for just young people to get to understand what is voting, what is it all about, what does it going to benefit you and the nation, who are you going to vote for? This is where the level of voting education, I think, it's supposed to start. Why am I saying so? We are now having a problem of politicians. We are now having a problem of people who are now taking voter education system into their hands and try to educate, the youths for their own benefits, for them to retain power, for them to remain in power. But at the end of the day, there's nothing useful or there's nothing tangible that we can talk about that the youth has benefited for out of this voting thing. So my main issue in my presentation, my brother, is that we need to engage, even the parliamentarians who are there, or the ones who are going to come in. Because remember, every election that we are having in Zimbabwe, we've got new voters. Every election, we've got new voters. But these new voters, you realize that they don't have any form of education. When ZEC, which is mandated to conduct voter education and everything, sometimes they will face so many challenges. But these challenges, I believe, can be tackled at secondary level of education, because it will be part and parcel of the syllabus, or it will be part and parcel of the curriculum, where the new voters will know that when they turn 18, they are going to, if they want to, to use their constitutional right to cast their vote, they can do so because they've already got enough education from school level. But now, this is where now you see so many funny NGOs who are making money, out of our youths. They will move around saying we are doing voter registration, we are campaigning, we are doing this and this and that and this and that. But at the end of the day, after election, are you going to see these NGOs? Are you going to see these politicians? Are they going to come back to the people, or to our youth, that after you voted, this what happened and so forth? They will never do that because they've already made money from organizations that they are funding them. You see, so us as Zimbabweans, to some extent, I can feel and I can see that we are being used. There are people who are making money out of our ignorance. There are people who are making money and continue to get rich and richer every day. Why? Because of our failing to come up with the concrete strategies. So I'll end by saying, fellow Zimbabweans, let's engage our members of parliament to probably change this educational voter. When I heard, politicians in parliament saying that we're pushing for electoral reforms and so forth, I thought it was going to be one of the electoral reform, my suggestion. But to be honest, if you read their electoral reforms, they're actually vying for, or they're crying for, there's nothing meaningful. They're just pushing for their agenda. They're just pushing for them to remain in power.
Should we be encouraging youth to vote? I think we should encourage them to join political parties and take positions of leadership, so that from there, because without being a member of a political party, I think some of the things we may fail to know them or to understand them. I simply would want to say youth should join political parties. And we have so many in Zimbabwe. Don't go to two parties only to say, oh, that's the big one or what. And we should also stop selling out our lives by saying any political leader who comes to talk to you, you want to ask for money from them. We are selling out our lives. People have voted for T-shirts, and you will see that they become quiet when it is time to ask for results from these MPs and councillors and and presidents. So I would encourage the youth to join any political party. From there, you can then vote your party.
I think the youth vote is one of the most significant votes that we have, and it's obviously the deciding vote. But obviously, if we're going to move forward as a country, the best way of moving forward is the youth realizing that without political reforms, without electoral reforms, the vote is as useless as a toothless bulldog. So it's an element of the only way to test if the vote works is to vote against a certain party, and that is the only way. And it has to be collective. This is that Zimbabwe should do for itself, for its future generations, and to help ensure that we safeguard the vote for decades to come. We've had a struggle from the 1980s when ZANU-PF took office. We had a serious struggle in 2002. We have the serious, even worse off struggle in 2008 to really define what a vote was and the impact of a vote. We had a serious challenge again in 2018 when the vote itself resulted in the murdering of citizens in Zimbabwe in broad daylight by the army. So we really need to get to a point where, as a youth, we take matters into our own hands, because for politicians to have power, they need to have some form of control. And that control has to be mass action and mass movement. And the majority of the voters are the youth, whether rural or urban. Those are the ones that have a significant say in the coming election. To make it harmonized means the youth have to be in unison in terms of ensuring that none of them are used as weapons of personal or political distraction for one or the other. And that has been the significant play for most politicians, not just in ZANU-PF, but we saw that with Triple C as well. So there's need for a change. And the only change can come through really forcing a direct hit on changing the status quo. And it can only be collective. And once that's done, you can go back to the drawing board and start deciding on how best you can protect the vote, the electorate. Because right now, truth be told, as long as ZANU PF top wing status quo remains, the vote, it has no significant value to anyone. It has no significant value. Voter apathy will always be there because people perceive that there's always going to be rigging, there's always going to be some form of violence, there's always going to be some kind of electoral problem. We've seen that with Zach, even as much as they are the ones governing the votes going forward. There was clear indication that they may not be competent enough to do this. There was clear indication that there were some problems with them leading such an exercise. So the only way is mass action, mass movement. And I think whether it's youth from ZANU-PF encouraging people to vote and ensuring that there is a voter exercise that works, whether it's from Triple C or MDC, it's got to be done, and effective voting must take place. And it should result in an unquestionable change of a certain status quo for Zimbabwe to be able to change the status quo. And then even if they are brought back in the next harmonized election, fair and fine. But on this one, I think some people need to go and rest, re-strategize, whilst the youth fix the constitution, whilst the youth fix the country. It's got to be a point where, in closing, I'd say we stop voting for political parties, because that is what has destroyed our parliament. That's why we had 5 years of a parliament that was dysfunctional. We start voting for people that are competent. It's better to have a parliament that is mixed than a parliament that is full of probably MDC or Triple C or ZANU PF, and they all don't really have the people at heart. Thank you very much.